If there was a more mature, funnier, more well-informed small business marketing lover than me, then it's Jay Baer. This guy has an uncanny ability to turn even the most skeptical business owner into a marketing tragic. I've been following Jay's work for over 10 years. And every book, he's written 6, every research study he's launched, every new concept he comes up with to help us small business owners grow never fails to disappoint. It's an exciting episode 615 of the 13-year-old award-winning Small Business Big Marketing Podcast.
Well, I said, welcome to a small business marketing show where successful small business owners share their souls to take your marketing straight to the lead. Now, here's your host, Mr. Tim Reid.
And welcome back to your weekly dose of on-time marketing. I'm your host, Tim Reid, and I have an insatiable curiosity for uncovering marketing ideas that help businesses just like yours to grow. I do that through weekly in-depth conversations with successful business founders. You, infinitely more importantly, you're a motivated business owner ready to crank out some great marketing to build that beautiful business of yours into the empire that it absolutely deserves to be. So, as per usual, team, there is marketing GOLD dripping from the ceiling over here at Small Business Big Marketing's HQ. So let's get stuck right in. Okay, so if I asked today's guest, his name's Jay Baer, to introduce himself, here's what he'd say. And I quote, "The world's most inspirational customer experience, customer service, and marketing keynote speaker, New York Times best-selling author of 6 books, a 7th-generation entrepreneur, the founder of 5 multi-million-dollar companies, certified tequila sommelier, and lover of all things plaid." End quote. I agree with all the above. Plus, here's my own 2 bobs worth. You see, Jay Baer is a marketing hero of mine who I've been following for over 10 years. He first appeared way back in episode 296, where he spoke about his then new book, Hug Your Haters. What I really like about Jay is that he has an engaging way of identifying and uncovering the fun side of marketing that always produces results for those who action his teachings. Jay's second book, Utility, is in my top 3 marketing books of absolutely all time. In terms of his achievements, it's an impressive roll call. He's one of less than 200 living members of the Professional Speakers Hall of Fame, an inductee into the Word of Mouth Hall of Fame, and an advisor to more than 700 companies since 1994, including Caterpillar, Nike, the United Nations, the UN, and 36 of the Fortune 500. Now, I've got to encourage you right now, get your journal out for this one as we cover so much marketing gold it verges on embarrassing. Topics include the importance of speed in business, how to create an unforgettable customer experience, how to create effective marketing on a limited budget. Jay shares his number 1 secret to getting a return from your social media investment. We talk about word of mouth marketing and so much more. Team, this is an embarrassment of riches. Here's Jay Baer sharing his favorite definition of marketing.
To me, the best definition of marketing is connecting customers with what they need. And sometimes that's from an information standpoint, sometimes it's from a product standpoint, sometimes from a price standpoint, an availability standpoint, but it's really just solving problems, right? I think we overcomplicate it. It's just solving problems for the consumer.
Mm-hmm. It's not that, exactly right. We do overcomplicate it, and it shouldn't be that hard. You know, one of the definitions I've heard, which I quite love, is marketing what you do when you can't go and see someone. So that idea of, being
Nice.
totally
Like
personalized with it. And we can do it more so these days because of technology. What frustrates you? You, like myself, you meet a lot of small business owners in your travels. What frustrates you about how they approach marketing or their marketing mindset?
I would say too often small business owners and managers want to outsource the marketing function. They want to find some local agency or a local business or a local consultant and say, I don't have time to understand how social media works, or I don't have time to understand how search engines work, or I don't have time to understand how YouTube works. So I'm going to pay you some relatively insignificant amount of money, and I want you to make this happen. And then they are shocked that it doesn't work very well. I was like, well, look, if this is that important to your business, and it is, you need to spend the time to figure out how this works. Now, I'm not saying that every small business owner needs to do their own SEO or their own Facebook or their own Instagram or whatever. But if you choose to not understand how it works, it will probably never work that well for you because, frankly, you don't know if the person you're hiring is any good or not.
Well, you hear that all the time. What you're suggesting makes theoretical sense. I'm sure there are many business owners listening who go, I just don't have the time to sit down and, wade through videos on SEO or write my own sales copy, or how on earth do I get into MailChimp and set up a direct mail campaign? That just sounds way too hard.
And that's not what I'm suggesting. I am suggesting that it doesn't matter what the technology is or the channel. I mean, I started in this business before the internet existed. When I was in university, I had a typewriter. So trust me, I didn't grow up with this. I had to learn all of this along the way. And at some level, you make time. But what I'm really saying is not that you learn how to send your own emails and log into MailChimp. What I'm saying is you learn what the customer wants from your business out of marketing. And that's the part that we forget, because the one thing the customer doesn't want is an ad. The one thing the customer doesn't want is a brochure dressed up as a YouTube video. They want their problem solved and their questions answered. So understanding what your customers want, then whether that you deploy that as a blog post or a video or a tweet, whatever, that's just details. But the idea of what problems can we solve with our marketing, to me, that's the part that business owners shouldn't outsource.
Well, that became very evident to me with your book Utility, which I still absolutely love. There are a number of quotes. I mean, it was basically a book of quotes from my point of view. It was beautiful, and thank you for that book. But one of the quotes was help, not hype. Tell, don't sell. Even if you just understand that at its most basic level, it completely resets how you as a business owner can go about communicating.
We have this principle that I used to use in my company called the mom test. And Timbo, the mom test works like this, where if you create a piece of marketing material or a piece of content, if you want to use that term of art, and it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if it's a blog post or a brochure or a radio commercial or a YouTube video. It doesn't matter, whatever. And if you honestly take a look at that and say, would my mother, who presumably loves me unconditionally, would she actually like this and tell her friends about this? And if the answer is no, there's not enough value in it. Like, your marketing can be useful. The definition of utility, as you probably remember from the book, is marketing so useful that people would pay you for it. And I think that's still a really good test. Like, is your marketing itself useful enough that somebody would say, you know what, I would pay them $5 a month to get access to this? And the answer is, in almost every case, no, because I don't want to receive this marketing. But that doesn't have to be the case.
Can you think of a business, Jay, a small business, not a big business, where people are paying to receive the marketing?
Oh, that's a good question.
What a challenge that would be.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe. I mean, there's certainly companies that have newsletters or catalogs. I'll give you an example. Yeah, it's not a super small business, but relatively small. Just today, there's a hotel chain in the States called Graduate Hotels. And I wrote about them in my book, Talk Triggers. And they're in university towns only. Each hotel is decorated as an homage to that particular university. So they're all very, very interesting and different boutique hotels. And they're intended to be the place that you stay when you go visit your former university. There's about 20 of these hotels in the U.S., so still a relatively small business. They just published today a coffee table book, 250 pages, that sumptuously photographed, and then it's a description of how and why they designed each of these hotels in the way that they did. So the one in Madison, Wisconsin, which is near the University of Wisconsin, why does it look that way? Why did they pick this kind of carpet and this kind of lobby design? It's really interesting. I paid today, literally $55 American plus shipping for a coffee table book from a hotel.
He's a marketing tragic. Come in, Spinner.
I tell you what. And, I reward good marketing, and I think we all should, frankly.
It's a really interesting question that you raise, and I've never given it much consideration, as to imagine if people paid for your marketing. There's a fellow, one of the first podcasts I listened to, which got me into my podcast, it was by a fellow by the Phil McKinney. He has a podcast called Killer Innovations, and it's all about killer questions. And those killer questions force you to look at a problem from an angle that you've never considered. And I think, what do we need to do in order for people to pay us to receive our marketing is a really interesting question. And it doesn't necessarily mean you'll end up charging for your marketing.
No, of course not, because information is largely free now, right? I mean, this podcast is a great example, right? Like, would your audience pay for this show? Yes. They don't have to, because that's the way podcasts work, but
Bloody
they would,
hope so.
Right? There's lots of people who write blogs that are good enough that the audience would pay for it if that was the way that it worked. There's a ton of YouTube channels where people would gladly pay for it if that is, in fact, the way that worked. So it is possible. I'm not suggesting that you have to go charge people, but that test of, is it good enough and useful enough and helpful enough that people would pay it if that was required, to me, that's a great, if nothing else, intellectual exercise to engage in your own business.
Yeah. Jay, that whole concept you raised in utility, and I've sort of I often talk about helpful marketing. You're ahead of your time. I mean, how old's the book Utility? And by the way, listeners, it's spelled Y-O-U-tility.
Yeah.
How long? That must be 10 years old? 12 years old?
We wrote it. I mean, I think we started writing it 12 years ago.
Okay.
And it came out 10 years ago. Yeah.
And only recently, Google put out another article. Put out articles all the time, just talking about the need. Guys, be helpful in all the content you're posting on your website. Stop yelling and start sharing, and help others make a more informed purchase decision, and we'll rank you better. And it goes back to this whole concept of marketing. It ain't that complicated.
No, the thing is, I mean, my good buddy Marcus Sheridan has a great book called "You Ask." They ask, you answer, which is a similar premise. And the idea is that if we asked everybody listening to the show, okay, here's our exercise. Stop the show, hit pause, get on your laptop or a piece of paper and a pencil, and write down the 50 questions that your audience asks you most often about your business, right? What 50 questions do your customers ask most often? Just answer those. One video at a time. One video at a time, one blog post at a time, one, hostage note at a time, whatever. And if you just did that, you'd be in really good shape.
That would be incredible. You create a knowledge center, like those guys at River Pools did. They created the learning hub or whatever, the knowledge center. And you know what, Jay, what I love about that is it addresses a mass market solution. So it's great for SEO. But at the other end of that spectrum, it's great for one-on-one marketing, because when a customer asks you a question, you still answer it. But imagine at the end of that conversation where you can say, hey, listen, do you mind if I send you a link to a video that goes into even greater detail in responding to your question? They're going to say yes, and they're going to think you care. Imagine that.
Yeah, and they'll save it because they may want to refer back to it later. That's one of the things I'd love to touch on for a second. This idea that your best marketing needs to be something that people can save, print, or share. So a lot of times we think about digital marketing and let's do something in social media or a blog post or whatever. And that's great. You should do that. But when it's a complex buying decision that may involve multiple members of the household, or certainly in B2B, multiple people on a buying committee, or maybe the consideration cycle is more lengthy for real estate or vehicles or things like that, the decision isn't typically made with one blog post or one Instagram video instantaneously. You got to get other people involved. Travel planning is another good example. So I interviewed this guy once. He's a real estate agent in Florida, in the U.S., and he only represents sellers. If you want to buy a house, he doesn't do that. Only sellers. And he only represents people who have homes at a relatively modest price point. So he operates kind of in the lower third of the business. Well, in the U.S., it's really common that if you have a home in that price range, you might not have a lot of built-in equity in the home. So you could sell it with a real estate agent, and in the U.S., it's 5 or 6% commission. Or what's common in that part of the market segment is that people will try to sell it themselves. Because if you can sell the home without a listing agent, which is possible in the U.S., You
Save
don't have to,
6%.
you don't have to pay the 5 or 6%, which, is real money. So what most agents do, and this is true of all small businesses, is they have some kind of a website that says, and again, the words may be in different sequence, but basically what it says, if you read between the lines, is don't try this yourself. You are not qualified to do this on your own. Only I am qualified. I am a professional. Well, this guy, Joe Manussa, is the opposite. He wrote a 60-page PDF called How to Sell a Home on Your Own. And it's literally exactly how to do it, step by step, what papers to fill out. So I interviewed him and I said, man, I don't get this because it seems to me like you're telling people exactly what they need to do to not give you money. And he said, yes, but they get to page 13 and they
Too
say,
hard.
wow, is it hard to sell a house on your own? It's his number one source of customers. And one of the reasons that's true is that it's incredibly useful. But the other reason it's true is that it's printable, savable, and shareable. It's a 60-page PDF. If it was a collection of blog posts, it would be much harder to sit down with your spouse, your kids, your parents, your financial advisor, and sift through all of that. So there's a principle that Chris Brogan actually came up with many, many years ago called give your best ideas handles. And I love it. It's like take the things that really are important to your customers and allow them to take it off of your website and keep it themselves because they may need to refer back to it again and again and again.
Oh, Jay, I love that. I absolutely love that. And it reminds me of another case study of Geek Squad many years ago. You know that company out of, I think they're out of New York, but they're basically a bunch of geeks dressed up like white shirts, narrow shoestring ties. They go into your home, install the surround sound, update your computer, do all that stuff. And they had a series of videos that exactly said, hey, here's how you update your computer. Here's how you install your surround sound. And I remember hearing an interview with the owner of Geek Squad who, when asked, why do you give away all this IP? He said, because our greatest customers are the ones that watch our videos thinking they can do it themselves, realizing they can't. And it just raises the question, and I get it, and you must get it a lot, Jay, in your keynotes, where someone will put up their hand and they'll say, you are asking me to give away all my IP. You're asking me to basically share with my competitors, because that's what they're thinking of. They're not thinking of their customers. My competitors are going to know exactly how I do things. And I always say, like, hey, Jamie Oliver, my hero, the celebrity chef, he's been giving it away for years. Doesn't make you a celebrity chef, though.
Well, and the reality is there is no secret. This idea that you've got some kind of magic beans that your competitors in the same business have never thought of, that's probably not true. And if it is true, it won't be true very long because somebody who works for you is going to go work for them and vice versa. It's a very fluid labor market. So it's kind of hard to suggest that you've got some kind of secret. And even if you think you do, the consumer probably doesn't care.
Jay, one of the things that I have loved about the way you approach marketing for small business owners, and I'm not quite sure how to put this into words, but you see the fun side of it. You have a great ability, and I feel like I've caught some of it, and thank you for the contagion, which is you find the fun parts of marketing. I talk to my audience about the idea that marketing should be a hobby, because when something's a hobby, you find the time for it, the resources, the energy, the money, and you put it in your diary every week, like you would going to the gym or meeting with your accountant. And it's not so much a question, it's an observation. But, even reading your newsletter, you just find the fun stuff. In one of your recent Bare Facts, you talked about some restaurant that had a steak knife platter.
Steak knife menu, yeah.
A whole steak knife menu.
Yeah.
And I just love the way you notice these things. And it's not so much a question, but maybe a nudge to, again, our audiences to have your marketing radar on. And don't think about the seriousness of marketing. Think about the fun stuff that you can do. Sometimes I think the fun stuff, it's just novelty, but it's not, is it? It's actually stuff that makes people talk and remember you.
Of course. Look, there is very few businesses that don't have a competitor or many, many, many competitors doing fundamentally the same thing. And consequently, what works best is putting a little twist on those operations so that your customers actually proactively tell their friends about you. Look, word of mouth has been the best way to create customers since the first caveman sold an arrowhead to another caveman, like literally that long ago. And it is still the best way to grow a business is word of mouth. Robert Stevens, who's the founder of Geek Squad, who we just talked about earlier, has an amazing quote, which I will replicate here, which is advertising is a tax paid by the unremarkable. Advertising is a tax paid by the unremarkable. Now, there is a time and a place for advertising.
Yes,
no question.
yes.
I spend money on advertising myself on occasion. But it is also true that many of the most successful businesses advertise the least, and they're able to do that because their customers want to tell other people about the experience. And that's why I'm such a big believer in sort of the blending and the hybridization of marketing and customer experience. Because if you get the experience right, it becomes your marketing. Look at a business like Lemonade, which is a relatively new internet-only artificial intelligence-assisted insurance company. The way Lemonade works is you've got a claim. You get in a vehicle accident or your house burns down or whatever. You go on the website. You type in what happened. You press a button. And within 3 seconds, they tell you whether or not your claim is accepted or whether you're going to have to talk to a human being. 3 seconds.
Whoa.
Now,
Whoa.
That's an experience that creates the marketing because it's so better, different, frictionless, obstacle-free that you can't wait to tell all your friends. And any business can do that, right? My most recent book, Talk Triggers, is about that idea of just put a little twist on your operations and you can create this huge wave of word of mouth, which gets you new customers for free.
The AI doing the insurance claim is interesting, and that plays to you've just released a fantastic research report about speed in business. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about Talk Triggers, but the speed in business thing. So the insurance claim, that's great if it comes through and within 3 seconds, hey, I've got my claim. It's done. But if you don't get your claim and you get a no, I don't know whether you know this, Jay, but do you get is there a reason for a no? Is there an opportunity to follow up?
They won't deny you a claim in 3 seconds. They'll just say, we can't process it instantly. We're going to have to put you on the telephone with a person. Because it's too weird. Like, you hit a car with an elephant. Like, wait, what? That's not in the algorithm, right? So insurance has a lot of nuance to it. But if it makes sense and it doesn't feel fraudulent, then yeah, they'll process it instantly. Or they say, click here to set up a call.
Let's talk about speed in business because it is a fantastic report you've just put out. And it was very timely because right now around my home, I'm doing some renovations and tradespeople are pretty tough. I don't know what it's like over your side of the world, but they're pretty hard to get over here post-COVID. A whole lot of stuff's, perfect storm. They're hard to get. Everything's expensive. They're freeing up the tradespeople around here because some of the big jobs have disappeared. Like they've just, some of the big developments have just disappeared. So they're now happy to do work for the little guy like me. But boy, oh boy, do you reckon I can get them to return a call or answer a phone or update a quote and resend it? It does my complete head in. And as a result, unless, sometimes I get desperate and go, look, enough's enough. I'm going to move on. But that whole speed in business would appear to be a point of difference. Do you want to explain what you mean by it?
Massive point of difference. The report's called The Time to Win. You can find it at thetimetowin.com. And all the books that I've written have done at least some coverage of this notion of speed and responsiveness being a differentiator. This is my deepest dive yet. It's a full report just on the importance of speed and responsiveness. And what happened, Tim, is that because of COVID, we changed our attitudes towards time. What we all kind of realized, and some of us realized it in a very dire way, unfortunately, is that we all only have 1,440 minutes a day. That's it. And time is literally the only thing that is shared equally on this planet. It's the only thing. It doesn't matter if you're in Australia or the States. It doesn't matter if you're a grandfather or a grandson, if you're Elon Musk or somebody experiencing homelessness. We all have 1,440 minutes a day, and you can't get more. And so all these trends in business, whether it's quiet quitting or the great resignation or work from home or this new one of leisure travel, where people are combining business and leisure travel, all of those trends are actually all driven by the same trend, which is that we care more about time and how we spend it. So I kind of started to pick up on that. I did a research project on it. And what we found is that today, consumers care more about time than ever before. If it takes longer for a business, like a trades business or any business, to get back to you than you think it should, what it feels like is that somebody is stealing time from you. And if they get back to you more quickly than you expect, it feels like you've been given the gift of time. Time has always been important in business, but I will tell you that right now, and the data back this up, it is the most important component of customer experience. More than half of all customers have hired the first business to respond, even if they weren't the least expensive. Because if they're slow to get back to you before you gave them money, they're definitely going to be slow to get back to you after you already have their money, right? I mean, it's just the nature of it, right? So you've heard for sure, and you probably talked about on this show that good, fast, cheap, pick any two, right? That's always been an old chestnut. Good, fast, cheap, pick any two. I will tell you, fast needs to be one of them. So you can then decide if you're going to be fast and good and fast or fast and cheap, but you better be fast because right now it really matters.
How can you give some 2 or 3 case studies, Jay, of businesses who are using time really effectively? Because the great thing about this is I think it's a free strategy.
It is. Well, there's probably some operational costs at some level, but largely it is a free strategy. So there is an accounting firm in Indianapolis, in the middle of the U.S., not too far from where I live, and they are unremarkable in every way. Small accounting firm. They have 2 principals and associate. They do small business tax returns, personal tax returns. There's 41,000 small accounting firms just in the U.S. 41,000. And they all do the same thing. Like nobody's got a secret sauce. You don't have like tax laser. Like it's the same thing, right? So how do you differentiate? They do it with speed. They're called Bogdanoff and Dodges. And they've engineered their business, Tim, so that they respond to every client, phone or email, at all times within 5 minutes.
What?
5-minute
How?
response time from an accounting firm.
Well, okay, what's the response
crazy.
look like? Is that an automatically generated, hey, thanks for your call, I'll get back to you? What does that actually look like?
So on email, it's actually a reply, which could be, hey, let's set up a call, or we'll do this in greater length, that you get an email back. And on the phone, they actually reply to your call, same thing, and say, we heard you, we got the question, we'll set up a time. The way they've done it is if Paul's on the phone, Tim handles it. If Paul and Tim are on the phone, the associate handles it. If Paul, Tim, and the associate are on the phone, then the front desk woman handles it. So they actually have like this phone tree, if you will, a triage plan to be able to make this work. And it's amazing, right? And so they have, last time I checked, I think 75 or so Google reviews for an accounting firm, which tells you all you need to know about the power of this strategy. Because I have had, 7 accounting firms in my long career, and I have never left a review. Because what would the review say? Guess what? Got my taxes back. All the numbers seem to add up. 5
Yeah, that's right.
Like, what's the review about, right? So, on Google, you can actually look and see what words are most common in the review. So I'd read every review that Bogdanoff and Dodges has, and like 80% of the reviews specifically mention how fast they are.
Yeah, fantastic.
So it's possible. Like even in a business like that, which you would think that's not a business that could use speed, but they do.
Jay, speed or price? Which is more important?
2/3 of customers now say that speed is as important as price, which is pretty amazing. And on a related topic, about half of customers say that they would spend quite a bit more money, 25% or something like that, if you gave them instant access. So at Walt Disneyland and Disney World here in the US, they have this thing called the Fast Pass, which they've now changed the name to the Lightning Lane. I don't know why. The idea is that when you go to the theme park, if you pay a little extra, you get access to the rides a little bit earlier. And so you can kind of skip the line. And people love it. And one of the great lessons in this research is that every business could do that, should do that, right? If you sell furniture, can you have a fast pass and charge more so that you get your delivery first? Maybe first in the morning. Because sometimes they call we'll be there between 8 in the morning and 5 at night. I'm like, oh, that's useful.
Yeah.
But would you pay an extra, this is a legitimate question. Would you pay an extra $25 to be the first delivery of the day so that you knew they'd be there between 8 and 9? A lot of people would say absolutely, because it frees up the rest of my day. And so literally in almost every business, this idea of offering your customers this speed lane, this fast pass opportunity, talk about a revenue potential for small business, and everybody should be working on this.
Another great killer question, something around how can I charge my customers in order, to offer them a quicker service, a faster service. It seems a bit opportunistic. And if sometimes you kind of businesses create a problem of we'll slow things down. It's like Apple. I'm sure Apple, it's a conspiracy, I know, but they do all these updates, and every time you update your computer with the new software, it bloody slows it down. So therefore they're going, okay, I have to buy a new computer. Something going on there. Jay, I want to talk about customers' experience because you're big on that. Before we do, word of mouth. You touched on it earlier. You've written a book about it, Talk Triggers. I often think that word of mouth is not necessarily because to an audience of business owners, I will say, tell us what your best marketing is, and the majority will say word of mouth. I often think word of mouth is the result of great marketing, or actually the result of having a great product or service, but not marketing in itself. Talk to me about word of mouth, how you see it.
There's two types of word of mouth. You've got reactive word of mouth and proactive word of mouth. So reactive word of mouth is when you're out to dinner with friends and they say, hey, didn't you get your house painted recently? Yeah. How did you like the person that painted your house? I go, they were great. So it's when the topic is about the thing, you say, yes, I recommend that thing. Proactive word of mouth is different. Proactive word of mouth is you're at dinner with the same friends. The topic of conversation is the weather. And you're like, I got to tell you guys what happened to me last week when I hired this painter. I finished paying them, and then they said to me, hey, pick a card. And they fanned out a series of playing cards in front of me. And I picked a playing card, and if I got the Joker, they were going to give me $100 cash on the spot. Now, that's an actual word of mouth talk trigger thing that happens in businesses. It has nothing to do with painting, but it doesn't matter because it changes word of mouth from reactive, which is typically based on customer experience and customer service, to proactive, which is I can't wait to tell my friends this story. And businesses need both. They need both. Because one of the things we've learned in the research for all these books is that competency doesn't create conversations. Competency, hugely important, right? You can't survive as a small business without being competent, without running a good small business. But we don't talk about good. It's physiology. It's how people's brains are wired. They don't talk to their friends about good. They talk to their friends about unusual. So if you want your customers to tell your story, and you do, you've got to give them a story to tell. And the story isn't, it was good. In fact, I will tell you, the true 4-letter word for small business is good.
What do you mean by that? The true 4-letter word for business is good?
Well, usually the F word is the 4-letter word.
Yeah, okay.
But gotcha. The real 4-letter word is good, because good doesn't create conversations.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I would almost rather somebody be unhappy than say, how was it? It was good. Because if it was just good, they ain't telling nobody about it, never.
So that whole concept then requires the business owner to stop and reflect on what stories can I tell? What stories can I tell to my customers that my customers can then, create and pass on to people who may become customers?
That's it.
And it's hard sometimes for a business owner. Again, we go back to our earlier conversation, which is as a business owner, don't go and employ an agency to do this. Don't go and employ a copywriter. Try and do it yourself. Copy's hard, and coming up with stories is hard. Any insight into?
But usually the story isn't a story. Usually the story is operations, right? So this idea of they finish painting and they make you pick a card. That's not a story. It's an operational change. Or there's a dentist that I know of who every Friday he calls every single patient who's coming in the next week and says, "Hi, I'm Glenn. I'm your dentist. I understand that you're coming to the office for the first time next week. Before you get here, do you have any questions?"
I shouldn't have to say, wow, that should just be a thing, but...
And nobody does it. Like literally nobody
does it.
Nobody. And it's so effective. So I know this guy well. His name's Glenn Gorab. He lives in New Jersey. And he says that about 75% of his patients mention that phone call when they're in the chair. So he's literally like working on their teeth and like, thanks for calling me. And every single day, every day, somebody calls his office and says, look, I've got to drive way farther. I got to go way out of the way to come to you. But you're the dentist I want to use because you're the one who apparently called my friend Shirley before she ever came to the office. Like, it just builds all this goodwill and trust. And it's so outside the norm that people tell stories about it. And every one of those stories creates a potential customer at essentially no cost. The full and total cost of that program is his time to make like 5 phone calls every Saturday morning.
And surely it's got to be an enjoyable part too.
Of course, when you learn a lot too, you learn about your patients, and a lot of times he just gets voicemail, right? So it's just the premise more so than the actual conversation. So
it's a great segue, Jay, into customer experience, which I know you're huge on, and I am too. I just love that whole concept. So for that dentist, one of the moments of truth for him is when he gets to talk to his customers. But along that whole timeline, I don't know how you present customer experience. I'd love to know. But for me, visually, I always look at a horizontal timeline. I should say, horizontal. On the left is pre-purchase, and on the right is post-purchase. And all the way along are touch points or moments of truth where you have the opportunity to make your customer go, wow. And that's the fun part. Then you sit down and you go, okay, when someone calls us, how do we make them go, wow? When someone walks into our store, how do we make them go, wow? That's sort of my take on it. What's yours?
And it's also how to not make them go, I hate you. It's everything. It's everything in that continuum, right? So my definition of customer experience is this. It's the difference between what customers think will happen and what actually happens. That's the customer experience, right? So if they expect it to be an hour and it's actually half an hour, it's a great customer experience. If they expect it to be an hour and it's actually 3 hours, well, then it's a terrible customer experience. Nothing has really changed other than their expectations versus reality. So as a result, customer experience isn't one thing. It's not like a knob that you can dial in and out. It's all the things. It's everything. It's dozens of decisions that you make in your business every day. How do you answer the phone? What's the lighting like? Are your people on your sales floor polite? What do the receipts look like when somebody gets them? Like, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's all the things. And because all of those little individual touch points actually impact how the customer experiences every interaction with you. So it's a huge opportunity. It is the future of business is being better than your competition, not a better product, not a better service, not a better price, but a better experience.
And again, it's a fun thing to do. Go away with your team, create that timeline, figure out how to make your customers go, wow. And what I love about it, Jay, is that each individual moment of truth doesn't have to be amazing. It goes back to this concept of you don't have to be amazing with your marketing. Just be super helpful. And over that course of that timeline, I always think that 1 + 1 = 11. One of my most popular episodes, this will be like the 620th or something like that episode. Of all the episodes I've done, I spoke to an electrician, a guy who owns an electrical franchise in Australia called Platinum, and he's written a 21-step customer manifesto that every single one of his Sparkies must put into play every time they go into someone's home or office. Simple things like arrive 5 minutes early, not 10 minutes late. Don't park in the driveway. If you see a light bulb out in the home or office, change it, but no charge. These individually, they're not that interesting, but add them up.
But it creates an experience. And that's what I'm saying. It's not one thing. It's all the things. And what I like about that in particular is that it's documented. And because it's documented, it's consistent. Because inconsistency in experience is a huge problem. Because if a customer comes in and one time this happens, and the next time something totally different happens, that creates a lot of dissonance and confusion for the customer. And eventually, I don't really know what I'm in for here. So I'm just not going to come back anymore. So that's what I like the best about it, is a way that when you follow the checklist, right, it's all the same. I've got to get, we were talking about talk triggers a moment ago, just reminded me when you were talking about the electricians. So there's a business in Los Angeles, California called Mike's Plumbing. And it's a plumber, big surprise. Their word of mouth device is they're the smell good plumber. So they have a signature cologne that all the plumbers wear, and it's actually pretty nice apparently. And if you look in there, they've got hundreds of reviews. And it's like, man, he really did smell pretty great. And so you think about, you tell your friends at dinner, this guy came in and had all kinds of cologne on, and then he was a great plumber too. It's awesome.
Well, there's an example of marketing that he could sell. I wonder if he sells that cologne to the unexpected.
That's a good question. I should check into that. I like that idea. Yep.
Darling, what's that cologne you're wearing? Oh, it's eau de plumeur.
Or if you sign up for like an annual, a lot of times you do, like an annual pass or, something like that, you get a little bottle of the cologne, absolutely.
What do you think about signing up? I didn't sort of question without notice, but, well, in fact, all my questions are without notice because I haven't met you before. But that whole idea of membership or monthly, so many SaaS products, well, that's software as a service products. We're copying these monthly bills from web hosting, our mobile phone plans, our streaming services. But what about the plumber or the real estate agent or the accountant? The idea of charging monthly, great for cash flow for the business owner.
I mean, I pay my accountant monthly.
Do you?
Yeah, yeah. I have an accountant subscription. Absolutely. Yeah, which includes some bookkeeping and some tax help and some hourly advice. And yeah.
Are you just spreading the cost over a year, or are you getting additional benefits for being a member?
Additional benefits as well. I have a car subscription as well with a Volvo. They have it's called Care by Volvo. So it's a new car on a 2-year lease, plus all the maintenance, plus my car insurance for one monthly subscription price. I'm a huge believer in the subscription model, partially because it takes ambiguity away for the customer. It makes it easier at scale for the business to provision it because you know what everybody's supposed to get each month or each quarter, each year. And just from a trend standpoint, young consumers love it. They absolutely love all subscription models.
Well, they've grown up with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is, this idea now, you're seeing it in a lot of big cities in the US, probably in Australia too. Big property developers are building new communities that are not communities of new homes, but they're building new homes to rent. It's like they're building them to rent from scratch, but not apartments, actually houses, and then they're doing it on subscription. So you subscribe to live in this home, which is really an interesting trend.
I interviewed a lady a number of years ago now, Jay. She was a naturopath down in Brisbane. Catherine Maslin was her name. I think it was Brisbane Naturopathy. A typical clinic. Prior to me interviewing her, well, the reason I interviewed her was she went to a subscription model, but prior to that, she just, she employed physios and chiros. They actually leased rooms from her, naturopaths, dietitians, all that kind of stuff. They paid a weekly rent, and then you as the customer to that clinic, you said, I'm going to go and see the chiropractor, and you'd pay the chiropractor. Catherine ended up putting all those practitioners on the payroll and created one monthly fee where you could just come in and choose whatever modality you wanted. And I felt at the time, I said, is it open to abuse? Are people coming in every day for an adjustment for the chiropractor? Are they coming every day to talk about their diet? But people don't. They love the convenience of it. They respect what it is. There'll always be an outlier who does abuse it. You get rid of them.
Yeah,
it just seems a really...
Yeah. Oh, and actually it's kind of nice, right? Because I think you probably find in that model, you probably surface the people who abuse it quicker than you would in a regular transactional model.
Jay, I've interviewed a number of business owners over the time. In fact, one that comes to mind, he has an agency. His name's Stu McGregor. He has an agency in Sydney called Liquid Ideas. He helps beverage brands market themselves. And he finally decided, hey, I need to test all the knowledge that I've given out over the years to other beverage brands on myself. And he was going to create a tonic water, but it was the time that Fever Tree tonic water came out and completely changed everything. So he goes, okay, that's done. I'm going to create a gin. And it was at a time when gin actually wasn't big. It was about 7 years ago. And he's created 4 Pillars Gin. I don't know whether you know it. It's an Aussie brand.
I think so.
It's an awesome gin brand. Now there's lots of awesome gin brands, but he's applied all his marketing principles on his own product, and he's had a winner. You are the second biggest non-celebrity tequila influencer on Instagram,
True.
right?
True. That's true.
And you've done it, I guess, because A, you love tequila, and B, you wanted to test all this wonderful knowledge that you have and share with others on yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a digital marketing advisor for 30 years. I figured, let's see if this actually works.
That's right.
And yes, I'm a big tequila fan, and I've spent a lot of time in Mexico, and I'm certified by the Mexican government in tequila culture and a bunch of other things. So I make 4 videos a week, and I've got 35,000 followers on Instagram, another 75,000 on TikTok, and it's a lot of fun. It's going really, really well, and a lot of celebrities, real celebrities, follow me now for tequila advice, which is kind of hilarious. And people recognize me on planes. It's a little disheartening though. I'll tell you, Tim. I've been a business strategist for 30 years, and I've got way more followers on my tequila account in 6 months than I do on my business account in 30 years. So my takeaway lesson is this: people like tequila more than they like marketing and customer experience.
Is that disheartening?
Yes, a little bit.
I would have thought it would be. What skills that you're applying to build your tequila personal brand? You don't have a tequila brand. I'm guessing that's probably somewhere in the background.
It's on the roadmap.
I would have thought so. One or two particular marketing skills that you've applied to this area of your personal brand, Jay, that have really got traction?
Well, some of it's actually what we talked about earlier, is just being useful, right? So I don't really get paid in any direct way, but my observation was that in the U.S., I'm not sure what the global number is, but in the U.S., there's 40 million people a month who have at least one drink or cocktail that includes tequila, 40 million people. Of that 40 million, the overwhelming majority of them are novice or intermediate tequila aficionados. There is a small percentage of super nerds who are really, really into tequila, and they've got blogs and Reddits and YouTube channels and all that. And heretofore, almost everybody who creates content in tequila is essentially making tequila for experts. It's experts making tequila for each other. That's a very small slice of the market. So my angle was, well, who's making videos for people who don't know anything? And so one of the things that my first boss taught me, he said, never overestimate the audience's knowledge, right? It's very easy to assume that the customer knows what you know because you have the curse of knowledge, right? You've been in furniture for years, or you know how to produce a podcast or whatever. They don't. And so I make videos primarily for people who don't know anything about tequila. And that's one of the reasons why it's really effective. So that lesson has really helped. And then the other one, I'll say 2 more. One is just consistency, right? It's 4 videos a week, every week, period. It's the same time. It's the same days. We don't miss a day. Like I don't make videos when I'm inspired. I make videos because it's the day to make the video. And marketing works the same way. You've got to be consistent. And then the third thing is just being able to communicate concisely, like in a self-contained unit. So every video is under 90 seconds. Like that's really all that works on Instagram and TikTok. So I've got to take a complex topic or a somewhat complex topic and dial it in 88 seconds, right? And that's good training for a lot of things in life.
Yeah. The idea that you talk about 90 seconds, and I get asked a lot, how long should a podcast episode be? How long should a YouTube video be? My answer, and I'll be interested, I'll acid test it on you, but my answer is as long as it needs to be and not a second more, which means that if you're interesting, hey, go for gold, talk for half an hour. Do you disagree with that and think, no, it's a short attention economy, 90 seconds is where you lose people, full stop?
Well, no, I think, no, you're exactly right. People say that consumers have short attention spans now and all that. That's not true.
I agree.
It's not true. I mean, people will sit down and watch 6 hours in a row of Netflix. Like, attention spans are there. It's just, can you hold their attention? And largely, it's harder to hold attention the longer you go. But for me, the reason I keep the video short is not because of any thesis. It's that technically that's what you have to be, right? So, on Instagram, to do a reel, it has to be under 90 seconds to really be effective. TikTok, I could go longer. I could go up to 3 minutes, but I look at my analytics, and at a minute and a half, it starts to fall off, right? And almost literally in TikTok and Instagram in particular, the shorter is better, right? Like, I would do them in 40 seconds if I could get it done, but I can't do it that short.
Jay, last question, and it's a question I'm sure we could talk about for about 4 weeks, but social media. As a marketing person who represents small business owners, for way too long, I have seen them thinking, I'll just get on Facebook, I'll get on Instagram, I'll get on TikTok. It's the silver bullet. It's free. It'll change the way I market my business. You and I both know that for 99.9% of businesses who do that, they're just completely frustrated by it. I'm not getting any likes. I'm not getting any shares. I'm not getting any comments. It's just not working. But they persevere because they feel they need to be there. such a big area. And by the way, as a father of 3 now 20-year-olds, but who grew up, through their teenage years, I hate social media. But I think as a marketing person, there's some potential there.
Oh,
Any
huge
tips?
potential.
I know that. Any tips for a small business owner who's going, social media, I need to be there, but I don't know what to do?
Well, I'll give you one which I think will really help, which is if you stop thinking of social media as the place where you're going to get brand new customers and instead think of social media as the place where you're going to get your existing customers to spend more and more often, it will completely alter what you publish and why and when, and it will actually work a lot better. Think about social media as it was originally intended, which is a place to make the people who like you love you, as opposed to the place where you're going to create customers out of thin air, and you will be much better off.
I knew you'd have a great answer for that, Jay. Now, people can find you at jaybaer, BAER.com.
Yep.
That's a fantastic site. You mentioned the website for your report on speed.
For the research, yep. The research is theTimeToWin.com.
And if you want to drink some tequila with Jay, your Instagram is Tequila Jay Baer, which
Tequila
I
Jay Baer.
absolutely love.
Find me.
Hey, thoroughly enjoyed chatting with you, and I know the insights gleaned will be appreciated by the audience. Thanks, Jay.
I appreciate it. Lots of fun.
There you go, team. Small business marketing expert and personal hero of mine, Jay Baer. Did I fanboy it too much? Did I keep my cool? I think I did. I hope you got plenty of implementable marketing ideas from that chat. How compelling is his take on speed in business? Understand that alone, and you should see some uplift in your business. What was your big takeaway? I just so want to hear from you after that interview. Pick up the phone now, 0480 015 150, and leave me a message on the Small Business Big Marketing hotline as to what grabbed your attention. Leave your business name, leave your website address for some gratuitous self-promotion, but I would love to hear what sort of made you go, whoa, can't wait to implement that. 0480 015 150. Just like long-time listener and motivated business owner and plumber, Amy did.
Hi, Timbo. My name's Amy. I'm a plumber by trade. I now have 2 businesses. First one, Tiny Stays. We built tiny houses and rent them out as short-term accommodation in Melbourne. And I've just started up a women's workwear brand. And I absolutely loved the episode on Fortress because it made me think, the whole go big straight away. Tiny Stays, we started quite small and slowly got there. But now for Aim's Workwear, I'm like, yes, roaring, let's turn this into some epic thing. So thanks for getting me pumped. Love the podcast. Love you. Thanks, mate. Have a good one. Bye.
Oh, Amy, I love you too. What a lovely way to finish a business phone call. I love it. Hey, so glad you got something from my chat in episode 605 with Fortress owner John Satterley. He certainly went big from day one. Pretty interesting topic, one that I hadn't covered before, that whole concept. If you're going to do something, don't stuff around in the sort of minutiae. Just go big from day one. And John did that with Fortress, which is Australia's, I think, biggest e-sport venue. And he's absolutely nailed it. Hey, Amy, wishing you huge success with your women's tradie wear gear. I think it's an awesome idea, an idea right for its time. Have a listen to episode 570 with Leah Sampson, who's manufacturing motorcycle gear for women under the brand name Queen Cherry Bomb. I've put a link in the show notes over at smallbusinessbigmarketing.com/615. Otherwise, just look for episode 570. Amy, thank you for taking the time for calling. Everyone else, be like Amy. Call me on 0480 015 150. Put it in your phone under Timbo and let us know what's happening in your business. I would love, love, love to hear from you. Got some great guests coming your way in the next few weeks. You'll hear from the Today Show's Chief of Staff. Unusual. Normally we speak to business owners, but this guy is working to help business owners. He's going to help explain how you can get yourself and your business on TV And is it worth it? Interesting. And retention expert Adam Robinson will share how to attract and retain your ideal client and how to use polarization as part of that strategy. You got to piss people off to bring people in. That's what he's going to tell us, I reckon. If there's a business owner you'd love me to chat to, email me. Let me know who they are. Tim@timreid, reid.com.au, and do an intro. If you enjoyed today's ep, be sure to hit the subscribe button. Please do that. Please leave a review on iTunes or your favourite podcast app. That'd help a lot, because you'll also find 614 more chats with successful business founders on your favourite podcast app. As per usual, this show was stitched together by editor extraordinaire Alex Amster. Thank you, Alex. The music bed written, sung and produced by our very own in-house rock star, Lockie Doley, who happened to play for Powderfinger, who I happened to interview the drummer of a couple of weeks ago. Bit of a life goal, that one. But most importantly, thank you to you for tuning in. May your marketing be the absolute best marketing. Bye for now.